Good morning, I'm Wayworn Worm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to the Friday show. So, I spent last week talking about how the channel's doing and what it's going to be doing for the next year. And I decided this week, the last couple of days I got a bug up my ass. So, I'm going to get political. And specifically what I'm going to talk about is the Electoral College. How I feel about the Electoral College today, how I felt about it for most of my adult life, why Donald Trump becoming the president, becoming elected, changed my idea, and also why that change is not me being pissed that my team won, or my team lost and the other team won. Which is what a lot of valid, bringing up valid concerns about the Electoral College is just chalked up to and dismissed as. So I'm going to specifically talk about why that's not the case. And why, no matter what the Electoral College's outcome is, well, with one possible exception. There is one way that the Electoral College can get me to like it again at the same level that I did beforehand, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, as you might be able to tell from that rather verbose intro, I don't like the Electoral College currently. I haven't since the last election. I haven't for the last 2 years. Once that whole fallout happened and finished and the dust was settled, I'm anti-Electoral College. And I don't think anything's going to change that. I think as long as the Electoral College exists, I will be anti-Electoral College for the rest of my life. However, that has not always been the case. For somewhere in my teenage years, I don't remember exactly when, I formed the opinion that the Electoral College isn't inherently bad. And it's not. It is not inherently bad as it was originally laid down. It's not specifically as an institution and an important check in our system a bad thing. Should it have existed? Probably not. There were a lot of unfounded fears in the late 1700s because, let's remember, that's when this was created, that there would be what we today would call a populist demagogue. They probably wouldn't have used those terms in the late 1700s, especially populist. Populist is a more recent term than that. But basically, someone who talks really well and... Okay. So this next sentence, this next descriptors are descriptors that the Founding Fathers would have used. They're not descriptors I would use. But someone who talks well enough to convince those dumb, illiterate farmers who don't know what's good for them to vote in this demagogue who would undermine American democracy. That was a big chunk of what the Electoral College was for. And also, a second reason was just logistics. When your news and your ballots only travel as fast as the fastest horses, it can take a while to get all of the votes to somewhere to be counted and find out. So what would happen is the electors would be able to speed up that process by being... They would actually get the vote. Like, they would decide who becomes the president, but their decision would be based on, or they would bring in consideration of the people who lived in the areas they were representing. Kind of an unwieldy system, especially once trains became a thing. Like, yeah, cars and internet and telephone and radio, and those all make an even bigger difference, and planes and all of that. Those all make a bigger difference than trains do. But trains, I would argue, have the fastest, the largest single influence. The step from the weeks and months to hours and days that it went from mail carrying by horse to mail carrying by train even beats the minutes and hours that are capable with phones to the seconds or milliseconds that the internet was able to speed up things. But anyway, the big purpose of the Electoral College was so we wouldn't get a populist demagogue, someone who would be objectively bad for America and bad for what America stood for. And in the early days, that idea was that they would bring a European-style monarchy and or invite ourselves to be annexed by a European power, whether that was England or Germany or France or Spain or something along those lines, which never happened. It never even, to my knowledge, we never even got close to that. That was a very overblown fear. Understandable why they had that fear, but there's no way that was actually going to happen. But for most of my adult life, I have been a supporter of the Electoral College because it is a bulwark against a president who could convince the people that they should become president when it's really, really crystal clear that they would be bad for America. Yeah. However, and I was willing to, I was okay with the fact that the Electoral College elected presidents that were not supported by the majority of people who voted in America about 5% of the time. And actually, if you break it down from the first time it happened through when it happened with George W. Bush, and there's only one other time that happened in between those two events, it's kept at almost exactly 5%. I don't know about the first or second time that it happened, but I do know I was old enough to remember the third time it happened, and George W. Bush was very clearly campaigning to take advantage of the Electoral College. And I don't think that that's necessarily a horrible thing. It's a very unfortunate thing. It's an undemocratic thing. It hurts America, but it's not horrible. As I said, I only know about that happening with George W. Bush. And I do freely admit that George W. Bush is not the first or only president who has campaigned to try and game the Electoral College. I get that Gore did it just as bad, that Obama's done it, that Romney did it, that Clinton did it, that all, at least modern U.S. presidents, to some degree or another, campaigned to take advantage of the Electoral College. I am freely admitting that. It's not just a thing that one side does that the other doesn't. Both sides do it. Both sides do it equally. However, George W. Bush is the second most recent example of someone playing to the Electoral College and winning the Electoral College vote and becoming president when the popular vote went the other way. But what I told myself until November 8th, 2016, at like almost midnight, I was up way past when I should have, considering what time I worked the next morning, watching those results. And I thought up until then that a 5% disagreement rate was worth this last bastion to, if every other way to defeat someone who would be just demonstrably bad as president, if all other possible avenues were tried, we'd still have the Electoral College to fall back on to prevent the presidency in the first place. And then, of course, we'd have the 25th Amendment and the impeachment process and several other ways trying to redress the problem later. But just if someone was just nakedly bad, would hurt America so much more than they helped it. We'd have the Electoral College. And then Donald Trump happened. So Trump is straight up bad for the country. Our economy, the stock market, has been tanking. I'm recording this video on Wednesday, the 8th. Trump is actually addressing the nation right now. I'm not paying attention to it. I will read fact-checked and curated articles about it later because I don't want to listen to his bullshit. This government shutdown is a couple of days away from being the longest shutdown in U.S. history. And there's no sign that it's going to end. Maybe there's something he's saying right now that's changing that, so by the time you see this on Friday, this shutdown could be over. By the time this video goes live. I hope it is, but the stock market has been falling almost every single day since. And the few times that it has raised or the declining has stopped has had nothing to do with the government. They would have happened even if the government wasn't shut down. So our stock market would be even better. I have family members who are saying that their retirement portfolios have decreased by 6-figure numbers. And some of these relatives are considering retiring. They are at or near retirement age. And they're seeing 6-figure numbers being taken out of their retirement fund because the stock market's falling so fast. He's pissed off every single ally that America has. Except maybe Israel. Okay, I will slightly walk back that statement. There are some that he might not have pissed off. He has pissed off the vast majority. Hell, even in his praising of Saudi Arabia, he still made them clearly uncomfortable. So even at his best, when he's trying to suck up to our allies, he's not doing a good job. He has advanced the cause of multiple enemies of the United States. Even forgetting anything involved with Russia. Like, let's set that off to the side. Since the Iranian nuclear deal was taken away, there's no longer anyone... There's no third-party way for someone to go into Iran and check their nuclear progress. There isn't. All of that monitoring that Iran agreed to was in that agreement that he took us out of. By unilaterally declaring that we're going to be leaving Syria, ISIS and Assad will both get a lot of pressure taken off of them. In fact, a lot of our Kurdish allies in Syria are starting to try and make deals with the Assad government to attempt to ensure that they're not just killed when they lose their main ally. And why do I say that Assad is an enemy to America? Because he fucking gasses his own people. He has used chemical weapons on Syrians. He has. Like that is an incontroversial fact. And I sure as fuck don't want any nation that uses chemical weapons on their own people to be considered a U.S. ally. Yes, I know that the U.S. has tested various biological and possibly chemical weapons on our own people just to see what happened, when we were trying to learn more about them, and that's despicable. We don't do that anymore. There was a period of time where Germany used chemical weapons on their own people. That government was destroyed. The people who were part of that government were murdered. They're gone. Most countries have done horrible things to their own people. And they don't anymore. And that's an improvement. I was going to say that's okay, but it's an improvement. The last time Assad did that, off the top of my head that I know about, was like 8 months ago. That's soon enough to still be calling that he's still doing it. That is still in the scale of present tense. He is trying to get us out of that morass called Afghanistan. And that's emboldening the Taliban. And the Taliban, they're sure as fuck our enemy. They've been our enemy since before I was a teenager. I was in middle school when they became our enemy. And that's not counting the rise in racial tension in America, the talks about removing civil rights from people. That's not counting the attempted deportation of citizens of America, some of whom were born here and have lived their entire lives here. Why have they been picked up and attempted to be deported? Because they're Latino. Race-based violence is up. Religious-based violence is up. There have been domestic terrorist attacks that didn't used to happen. I mean, it's exhausting talking about all of the ways that he's been bad for America. And the problem is he didn't try to hide it. He started his campaign by saying Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. Sure, he then tried to walk it back and say, well, I'm sure that some of them are good people. Some implies most aren't. He was saying most Mexicans are rapists and murderers and drug dealers and bad people. He made fun of the military, which, to be fair, I am not a fan of the God damn it. I'm not a fan of how much America loves the military. All the things that we're supposed to do if we, quote, truly support our troops. I'm not a fan of that. I'm also not a fan of making fun of the military or sending them to needlessly die to score political points. Or even better, a more recent thing, take them away from their families in the holidays and commit war crimes with them to serve a political point. We sent tear gas into another country to try and disperse people who were trying to legally enter the United States. How do I know they were trying to legally enter the United States? Because they're fucking trying to claim asylum, and you cannot claim asylum unless you are in America. And once you've claimed asylum, you have legally entered America. We knew that was what they were trying to do. How did we know? 'Cause they told us. They told us that they were trying to claim asylum in America. Which means that they were entering legally. They were not breaking any laws. So, no matter what you think about immigration and the laws that we currently have, they were following the laws that we currently have. He is bad for America. He has never tried to hide it. Everything that he said since he started his campaign it was not hard to see. He was bad. He is a fascist. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. I'm saying that as someone who knows what fascism looks like. Read Fascism, which is literally the book about fascism. Trump and his political beliefs fit perfectly into what fascism looks like. Does it look like Nazi Germany? No. Why doesn't it look like Nazi Germany? Because this is America in the 2010s, not Germany in the 1930s. Does it look like Italian fascism? No, because this is America in the 2010s. It's not Italy in the 1920s. It doesn't look like fascist Spain because this is America in the 2010s, not Spain in the 1930s. Every country and every time period, it's going to look different because that's how it works. However, they are going to have similarities. Similarities that matter. And Trump perfectly fits it. And before Trump, people who knew what they were talking about when they talked about fascism, there were people who tried to imagine what American fascism would look like. And it looks a whole hell of a lot like what Donald Trump looks like. Donald Trump is bad for America. If the Electoral College, bringing us back to our original point, the original talking point of the Electoral College, if the Electoral College did its job, the electors would have disagreed with the American people and not voted for Trump. Would that mean that Hillary Clinton was president? Most likely. Would she have made the best president ever? No, not by a long shot. Would she have made a worse president? No, not by a longer shot. A Hillary Clinton presidency would most likely look like a continuation of the Obama presidency. I happen to be a fan of what the Obama presidency looked like. Could it have been better? Yes, it could have been a lot better. Was it bad? No. Overall, it was good. It was about as good as we could expect. And yeah, Hillary Clinton would have continued Obama era policies, and our country would be in a much better place. And that's why I'm against the Electoral College. Is because they had a job, they had a chance to do what they were supposed to do. To stop someone who was objectively bad for America that somehow duped. Here's the thing, he didn't even dupe most of American voters into voting for him. He just duped just barely enough voters in a couple of key states into voting for him. That's it. The Electoral College is not awesome. And it's not awesome because it disenfranchises people based on where they live and how they vote. I live in Oregon. Oregon is going to vote Democrat in the next presidential election. How do I know? Because the Portland metro area is going to vote Democrat, because the Eugene metro area is going to vote Democrat, and the Salem metro area is going to vote Democrat, as well as a surprisingly large chunk of the Albany, the vast majority of Corvallis, and other pockets here and there. However, Portland, Salem, and Eugene are the top 3 cities by population in Oregon. And depending on how you count the estimated growth of Salem and Eugene in the last 9 years, one of them's the bigger, is the second biggest, the next one's the third biggest. Gresham, Hillsborough, Beaverton, the next 3 are all part of the Portland metro area. They're all going to vote Democrat. Then we've got Bend. Well, Bend's full of rich liberals. It's going to vote Democrat. Medford could go either way. Springfield, part of the Eugene metro area, is going to vote Democrat. Corvallis is going to vote Democrat. Albany is going to be about half and half. Tigard, Kaiser, Lake Oswego, they're all going to vote Democrat. Then we've got Grants Pass, we've got Oregon City, McMinnville. They're both part of the Portland metro area. Then Redmond, and then we've got Tualatin, Westland, Woodburn, Wilsonville, Forest Grove. Those are all parts of the Portland metro area. Well, Woodburn isn't really, but Woodburn is a very strongly Latinx population. They're probably going to vote Democrat. They tend to. So, what's my point in bringing that list up? That's the majority of the people in the state, or those cities. Portland's the biggest at closing in on 700,000 people. Then we've got Salem at 175-ish. Eugene, slightly smaller. I mean, once we get down to Bend, the 7th largest city, we're at under 100,000 people. There isn't a ton of people in Oregon. And, the top 3 cities make up a good chunk of the population. And so if you vote Republican in Oregon, because of the way the Electoral College works, you're throwing your vote away. Your vote will not count because it's winner take all. It doesn't matter if whoever the Democratic candidate in 2020 ends up being, it doesn't matter if they win, if they get every single vote cast in Oregon, or if they get half of the votes plus one. They get the same number of electoral votes. Now, there are a couple of states where that's not true. But I think that's a grand total of like 4 or 5 electoral votes that are outside of the winner-take-all system. And that's not even, talking about the fact that states with lower populations, their individual vote counts more. The one that the comparison people love to point out is Wyoming versus California. Wyoming has 3 electoral votes. California has 55. So on a state level, California's 55 matters a lot more than Wyoming's 3. That is very true. However, if you take the entirety of the population of Wyoming and you divide it by 3, you take the entire population of California and divide it by 55, you don't get the same number. What it ends up being is one person in Wyoming voting. They change the electoral vote by the same number, or by the same percentage of the vote as over 10,000 Californians. If one person in Wyoming votes a certain way, they change the overall vote in Wyoming the same amount as 10,000 Californians when you control for number of electoral votes in those 2 states. That's fucking ridiculous. And you can argue that it's fucking ridiculous either way. You can argue that it's ridiculous that one vote in Wyoming counts as over 10,000 votes in California. Or you can say that California getting 55 votes on the national scale to Wyoming's 3 is bullshit. You can argue that either way, and it's both true. If the Electoral College didn't exist, every person in the United States' vote would count equally. If we had the vote for the president the same that we have votes for senators, it'd be a more fair system. And why would it be more fair? It'd be more fair because the entire nation, every single person got one vote, and that one vote would be tallied, and whoever gets the most tallies wins. I don't think that's the best way to vote. The Jeffersonian first-past-the-post method, it has a host of problems. But we still have Jeffersonian first-past-the-post method. We just have this other complicated system tacked onto it because. That's fucking bullshit. So I said at the beginning of this video that I would go over why, what I used to think about the Electoral College, which we've done, what I think about it now, which we've done, why Donald Trump has made me change my mind. We've talked about him way too much in this video. I find him exhausting to talk about because he's just so clearly corrupt and bad, and yet that's a controversial statement. Yeah. I also said that I talk about why me being mad at the Electoral College is not me being sore that my team lost and his team won. And I think I've done that, but if you're not sure and you're still listening to this 40 minutes in, God help you, you're dedicated. I love you. I don't know if I could listen to myself speak about this for 40 minutes, and you have. Good job. Good on you. If you're still unclear about why this is not just me mad that my team lost, it's because the Electoral College had a duty, and I was okay with it because of its duty, and its duty was to make sure that Donald Trump wasn't elected. Specifically Donald Trump, no, but someone like Donald Trump, yes. And it failed. The whole reason why I was willing to be okay with all of its problems was because it was supposed to make sure that someone like Donald Trump didn't get elected president, and the one time in U.S. history where it could have fulfilled that duty, it disagreed with the national popular vote and elected Donald Trump. Because of course it did. Why wouldn't it? That's my issue. That's why it's not me being mad about whose team won. What could the Electoral College do to possibly win back my support? Make sure that someone like Donald Trump never gets elected again, and have the opportunity to make sure of that. Have someone like Donald Trump win the national popular vote and have him lose, or her, or they, lose the national election. That's how it could happen. There aren't many comments on my videos, but if there are comments on this, and you're an asshole, I'm going to delete them. I've done it before, I'm going to do it again. If you disagree with my thesis that Donald Trump is bad for the nation, cool, you're wrong. Like, I'm not going to debate you. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to spend that time. I'm just going to say you're wrong, and if you comment about it, I'm going to delete the comment. If you're going to dislike the video, okay. It's still an engagement. Now, if you support my topic and if you support everything I say and you make a comment and you're an asshole in the comment, I'm going to delete your comment. We can have a conversation. We can have a civil conversation. In fact, we can have a debate. We can civilly debate each other. If you're going to be an asshole, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to let other people listen to you. I have a very small platform, but I'm not going to allow it to be used to spread lies. I'm not going to let you argue in bad faith. End of story. Thank you so much for listening. You've listened to me rant and ramble and talk passionately for 45 minutes. Good job. Tune in tomorrow, where we're going to start The second on our Sherlock Holmes stories, The Sign of Four, which I would put in my top 10 favorite Sherlock Holmes stories. So tune in for that. And make sure you tune in on Sunday night where onto my Twitch channel, which you can find the link to in the description, where at 6:30 Pacific time in the evening, I will be playing D&D with my wife and some friends. Thank you.